GD Vicarja agus Forgate Fáilte, welcome back to another over-enthusiastic video about the past tense in Irish. I love it so much, it's so simple. Right, so we've done videos on how to make a past tense, very, very simple, and we've done videos on how to make the word that in the past tense, gur and nor, depending on positive and negative, right? So now I want to have a look at irregulars. Now, before you start to panic and you think, oh God, here we go, irregulars, it's all going to fall apart. Spoiler, it's not. It is going to stay so structured, so logical, and so patterned. I reckon you have PTSD left over from maybe doing French, German, Spanish and Italian, having to put irregulars into the past tense and all that. Forget those languages. French and Spanish could never, in terms of simplicity. I'm going to show you why. Number one, your language only has 11 irregular verbs. How darling. So we only have 11 irregular verbs, whereas French and Spanish, I think, have like maybe 50 plus irregular verbs that you just have to learn off by heart. And German probably has more irregular verbs than actually regular verbs itself, if the truth be known. We can fight in the comments, it's fine. But this is lovely, lovely and simple. We only have 11 irregular verbs. But not only that, right? What they haven't told you is we can actually break the 11 irregular verbs down a little bit more into two groups, because we love structure in Irish. So I'm going to break these down into the big six and the little five, right? So I'm going to break those 11 irregular verbs into two further groups so I can show you patterns. Now, they don't do this in your book, which is wild to me, right? They just throw the 11 irregular verbs around like there's no one's business. But Irish has lots of patterns and not just structure. So I'm going to show you a lovely, lovely, lovely trick. So we've got the big six and then we've got the little five, right? We're breaking it down. So let's have a look at the first couple, right? We have on rev 2, so we're going to call that 1. We have von Vodka, which is 2. Te, I'm going to call that 3. Jane is 4. Fur is 5. And Aber is 6. So I'm going to call this page here my big 6. Now don't do anything for a second, which means on the other page I have my little 5. I have tar, it, tour, bear and clush. So can you see how I've broken them down? So let's have a look at the big 6 for a second. You know these in Irish, but I'm going to show you patterns. I'm going to show you why this is one of the most, if you're good at like maths, economics and physics and chemistry, and you like things that just make sense, you should love Irish grammar. It's like maths. So what I want to do is I want to ask a question, right? So I've got my verb be. Fair enough. I want to say on rev 2. That's my question form. Now, fair enough, it changes from V to rev, but this is why they're irregular, because they change from tenses, right? So there's my question on rev 2. Now, if I want to say I was, I say V may. Irish is a verb first language. Put the V there, put the be there, it's grand. The verb, and then the person goes in second position. May, grand. What's the second letter in V? It's a H. What else, or why did you add a H in second position? Because it starts with a consonant. So B starts with a consonant. And even though these are technically irregular, I'm still kind of using the same rules that we did in the previous videos. So our irregular verbs are not really totally irregular. So that's why we say V. We pop the H in second position. We make it like a normal past tense. So now we can say V may, V2, V she, and V she. Perfect. Now I want to say I wasn't. So when it comes to the negative, I'm going to say ni rev may. That's important. I'm going to highlight this. Ni rev may. Now have a look at this. Down here I want to use my connectors. I want to use the word that in Irish. So do you remember previously in the previous video we said we used gur and nor, and we explained that. So for this, I'm actually going to use go, rev and knock rev. But have a look. See that question on rev 2? Well, that is the same rev that you are going to use to make your connector. So you can actually use the question form to make the connector. Go rev, knock rev, just adding go and knock. Let's have a look at number 2. Number 2, feck, the verb to see. Grant. So these are irregular. So I say on vodka 2. That's my question. Did you see? It's irregular. So I want to say I saw. So I say chonig me. But there's your H again in second position because C is a consonant. So it still follows kind of a similar rule. So chonig me, I saw. Verb in first position, person in second. Got it. Perfect. Now what I want to do is I want to say I didn't see. So I say ní aca mé. Ní aca mé. Now it's an irregular verb. We'll give it that. So that's why we've changed on vaca. Chonic ní aca. Now I want to use the word that in the past tense. He said that he saw. He said that he didn't see. I want to start using this now. So do you see your question on vaca 2? That is the exact same vaca, letter for letter, that you're going to use to make your connector. So if you understand the question, you're able to say on vaca 2, then that's the same word that you're going to use to make the connector. Go vaca me, that I saw. Knock vaca me, that I didn't see. Number 3, the verb to go. So, did you go? On nyakig 2. On nyakig 2. Grant. So I'm going to say, yeah, I went. And you know how to say hui me. There's your H in second position again, isn't it? These are supposed to be irregular verbs. Now, the reason why they are irregular is because sometimes in the negative they change. So, huig me goes to ni yakig me. Ni yakig me. That's grand. I didn't go. But if you want to use the connector and say, he said that he went, and he said that he didn't go, we're still going to use go and knock. But here's the good thing. Do you see that question again? On nyakig 2. That is the same exact spelling, the same exact word that you are going to use to make the connector. No changes whatsoever. You get to steal it again. He said that I went. Go nyakig me. He said that I didn't go. Knock nyakig me. They're straight up swaps as well. Look at number 4. The verb then, the verb to do, the verb to make. So I want to say, did you make? That's grand. So there's my verb on njarna 2. Did you make? Did you do? Grand. Now the reason why they are irregular is because they do change. But we still don't add anything. It's an or. We don't add anything to them in Irish. So rinne me, rinne two, rinne she, rinne she. Irish, verb first language, put the person in second position. No conjugation like in French, German, Spanish and Italian, even though these are irregulars. Lovely and simple. Now they are irregular, aren't they? So that's why we have to learn ni jarna me. I didn't do. Ni jarna me. But if you look at these, ni jaka me, ni jakig me, ni jarna me. I'm kind of putting similar patterns all the way down, aren't I? So ni jarna me, I did not do. Now look at your connector, right? I want to say that. He said that I did. He said that I didn't do. How do I do that, Michal? Very, very simply. If you understand your question on Yarna 2, then you understand the connector because it is the exact same identical word. He said that I did. Go Yarna me. He said that I didn't do. Knock Yarna me. Straight up swaps. Number 5, on vortu, right? On vortu means did you get. On vortu h a hain. On vortu h a do. So you want to pop that into the past tense and you want to say, yeah, I got. Voor me. Voor me. Yeah, voor me h a hain. Voor me h a do. The negative, because they're irregular, so they're going to change a little bit, is ni voor me. Ni voor me. I didn't get. Ni voor me h a do. Voor me h a hain. But what happens if you want to say, he said, here, come here, did you hear? Michal said that he got a H2. Michal said that he didn't get a H1. Well, that is the exact same connector that we're going to take from our word. It's the same spelling, it's the exact same word. So if you know that question, you can now make the connector go voor, knock voor, and it never changes. And finally, the last one, on noort to. On noort to means did you say? On noort to. So on noort to, did you say? Doort me, yep, I said. Sorry, on noort to. So doort me, I said, that's the positive. And ni doort me, I didn't say. Grant, perfect. They're actually quite simple, isn't it? Doort and doort, same thing. There's no differences, no spellings, no differences. Grant. But how do you say he said that he said? He said that he didn't say. Well, once you know that question of on noort to, that is the exact same noort that you are going to use to make the connecting form in Irish. He said that he said. Gunnorch. He said that he didn't say. Knock norch. and it never ever changes. Go and knock are straight up swaps. So let's have a look at this, right? Our irregular verbs, they're irregular, but there's only 11 of them. And we can break that 11 down into the big 6 and the little 5. So on the first page you have is your big 6. You have be, fec, te, dein, fi, and aber. But here's the good thing. Once you know your question, you know your connector. Once you know the question, you know your connector. Once you know your question, you know the connecting word. They are the exact same njarne down here. Voor is the exact same voor that we use for the connector. And norch, it's always the same. Once you know your question, you know your connectors. But here's the good news. If you know that your question for the big 6 starts off with on, then the negative has to be ni. So have a look at this. If the question is on, the negative has to be ni. If the question is on, the negative is ni. The question is on, the negative is ni. The question is on, the negative is ni. So if the question is on, the negative has to be ni. And the question is on, and the negative has to be ni. So if you know the question is on, has to be ni. Not only that, if you know the question is on in the past tense, and the negative has to be ni, then we have to use go and knock. So have a look at this. So the question is on, I have to use ni, and there's my go and knock. The question is on, I have to use ni, there's my go and knock. The question is on, there's my ni, so I have to use go and knock as my connector. The question is on, there's my ni, I have to use go and knock. They're linked and they are never separated. Never, ever, ever, ever. There's my on, there's my ni, I have to use go and knock. And finally the last one. There's my question on, there's my ni for negative, and here are my connectors go and knock. So if you know your question, your 6 questions, you will be able to use the negatives and you'll actually be able to use your connectors. That's why you're seeing go rev and knock rev everywhere. Now I'm going to work backwards for a second. All right. Let's just say, for example, in Irish, you see the word knock rev in sentence. That means that you can take out the word knock and swap it with the word go, and you've made it into a positive. Or you can take out the word go and knock and just replace it with on, and you've made a question. So see that on can be replaced by go and by knock. They're all interchangeable. Take out the question on, put it into go, and you've made a connector. Take out the word go, put in the word knock, you've made a connector. So once you know those questions, you're actually able to do an awful lot more. Now that's the big 6. They are the only verbs that you need to know, because have a look at this. Do you see the little 5? Turn over the page and I'll show you this. Look for patterns, look for structure, and then we're going to wrap it up towards the end, and this is where it'll all become a light bulb moment for you. So I've got these little 5 on the next page. Have a look at this. My question is hánig tú, and you would say hánig mé, I came, and near hánig mé, I didn't come. And then the connecting form, the word for that he came, that he didn't come, is going to be gur and nar. And hánig, it's the exact same hánig that you have here as here. No change in the spelling. Let's go and have a look at this. Itu. Did you eat? Yeah, itu. Grant. I ate. Did me. I didn't eat. Near me. And then I want to say that he ate, that she didn't eat. Well, I'm going to use gur and nar. And it's going to be the exact same down here. No changes whatsoever. Carbon copy. This is going to follow all the way through. Have a look at the verb to, or the verb to give. So I could say hug to, did you give? And you can say, yeah, hug me, I gave, and near hug me, I didn't give. And if you want to say he said that he gave, that he didn't give, So you're looking for the word that. Well, it's going to be gur and nor. Lovely and simple. And that hug is the exact same as the question form. It doesn't change. And the exact same thing, rug to, did you catch? Rug me, I caught. Near rug me, I didn't catch. And we want to use the word that in Irish. That I caught, that I didn't catch. And it's going to be gur and nor. But that rug here, it's still the exact same as the question form. If you know your questions, you can now make connectors as well because it's the same word. And finally, hula to, did you hear? Yeah, hula me, I heard, and near hula me, I didn't hear. And you want to say that he heard, that he didn't hear. You're going to use gur and nor. But that hula here is still the exact same as the question form. So here's the thing, right? Yes, the verbs are broken down into an extra 5 and an extra 6. But you see these 5, even though these are irregular, are they not the exact same words and rules that we used for the regular verbs in our first video? Because we said in my first video, making past tenses, that we use we use near for the negative, and the connector we know is gur and nor. So even though these are 5 irregular verbs, they still follow near, gur and nor. Near, gur and nor. Near, gur and nor. Near, gur and nor. And the is the question, near is the negative, and we still use gur and nor. So now let me simplify it down for you for 1 second here. Irregular verbs. Let's talk about verbs in general, right? So verbs in general are going to use for questions, near for negative, gur and nor for connectors. Use that rule for every single verb in the Irish language except 6 verbs in the past tense which don't use the ors. They use on, ni, go and knock. So think about it this way. I want to do the past tense in Irish. Irregulars are going to come up, but there's a pattern and there's a logic. Yes, I know teachers are screaming at me, Michal, you have to teach 11 irregular verbs. Kind of not really. Because our actual 11 irregular verbs, if we look for logic and pattern in our language, we can actually find that them little 5 use near, gur and nor, and they follow the exact same as regular verbs. So when I teach Irish, I don't tell you there's 11 irregular verbs. I only teach 6 irregular verbs in the Irish language, and it's these ones here: be, fec, te, dain, fi and aber. All use on, all use ni, go and knock. Every other verb in the past tense in Irish will use near, gur and nor. So yes, while we have only 11 irregular verbs, if you really, really, really wanted to look at it this way, we actually only have 6, and it's those ones there. And the good news is, if you know your question form, because Irish is full of patterns, on rev 2, because your question is on, you have to use ni and you have to use go and knock. But that rev is the exact same rev that turns up in the connecting form. It's identical. So think about it this way. You only have to know 6 irregular verbs in the past tense. And we don't have auxiliaries. We don't have avoir and être and ser and estar, and we don't have haben and sein. We've none of that crack. We don't have auxiliaries and eors and add on and e acute, and if it's masculine, if it's feminine, add this on, and if it's a verb of motion, it needs to be this, and none of that. None of that crack. Past tense in Irish, very, very simple. Now, it'll take a little bit while to digest. Now, the reason why I think it's going to take a little bit of a while to digest is because more so of the simplicity of it, where you've built the past tense maybe up into your head to be equivalent to something like French and German and Spanish and Italian, when in reality we don't have any of that effort in Irish. So I think from my point of view here is that teaching the past tense in Irish, it's more about getting you to see the simplicity of it. That's the hardest thing. If you sit back and you look for your patterns, your logic and your structure, you see Irish straight away for what it actually is, a very, very patterned and very, very regular language. So I'm going to leave it at that. Now, if you have any questions, any problems, any issues, you can drop me an email. I'll be going through this in the grinds anyway, again, just to kind of hammer it home. You can ask me questions in live form as well if you would like. But that is it. That is your past tense done and dusted. 3 videos looking at the rules, looking at how to use the word that, and then looking at the equivalent then for the irregular verbs in Irish. Now, if that makes sense, drop me an email and say, yeah, do you know what I mean? I get what you were saying. And then you can ask me, but can you clear up this for me then? But that is essentially your past tense done and dusted with irregulars. So I'm going to keep going through this because the past tense, as uniformed and as patterned and as structured as it is, when you get into the present tense and the future tense, very, very simple. Very, very easy. And here's a nice little bit of information for you as well. We're not really too pushed on irregular verbs in the present tense and in the future tense. But that's a spoiler. Pop over to next video and I'll show you those. A chairde, go to mi magah, slán inis.